All right, guys, here we are. The map is Metropolis. We've got another ZVZ, and our first Zerg that we'll take a look at is our pink Zerg from the team TSL. Took out Nerchio last game. It is TSL.RevivaL. Down at the bottom of the map, hoping to get the lead again for Acer. It is Acer.Bly, our orange Zerg, and if you look at the ZVZ statistics for both of these teams, the Acer players, the Acer Zergs, most of them have an over 50% win rate in ZVZ. If you take, the TLPD Korean win rates and the international win rates and add them together, that's kind of what you get. The TSL Zerg players in ZVZ, all of them except for one, and off the top of my head I can't remember which one it is, all have an over 60% win rate in ZVZ, going all the way up to Hyun, who has the highest actually.
Yeah.
And Symbol actually a little bit lower, ironically, in ZVZ, despite doing so well in some of the other matchups. But basically what I'm getting at, the point I'm trying to make here is that all the Zergs, pretty much all the Zergs on both of these teams are pretty good at ZVZ. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of who comes out on top. If he goes just by the numbers, TSL looks a little bit stronger, but being a mirror matchup, being that it is kind of volatile, I really feel like I could see any of these ZVZs go either way.
Well, we still have a couple of things, for Acer. Acer, of course, has taken some teams to the limit quite a bit, and now all of a sudden I have taken to the limit past the point of no return. Running through my head.
I've got that line from Riddick. Take us to the threshold. That was like the dumbest movie line ever. But
it was.
It was in a good movie, though.
Yeah, no, quite good movie. So games were pretty good based on him as well.
They were. But anyway,
yes.
You digress.
Yes, I digress.
We digress.
Yes, quite. Bly has shown up in a big way for Team Leagues. And that actually can't be overstated. He and Elfie were doing a good job of just kind of tearing through the qualifiers when these guys were initially trying to get into the event itself. So certainly glad to see him step up now and think he has a reasonable shot against RevivaL. There's also another wild card for Acer, and that is Scarlet. We haven't seen Scarlet in a while. She did make an appearance when Eclipse was qualifying for the event, but then, of course, she and a couple other players did end up leaving the team, and she ended up signing with Acer thereafter. So we've not seen her in a while. Elfie was certainly a very strong performer. They need someone to kind of fill that role, and we'll see if Scarlet is up to the task.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, if she gets a chance to play here. Obviously, just joined the team fairly recently. Haven't seen her quite yet in Team League, and everyone's kind of waiting. I mean, she had a good that good performance at IPL 4, but since then hasn't really had a chance to really be out there playing a lot of games. So everyone's curious. We'll have to see if she shows up later in this match.
So far, just mirrored builds out of our two players so far. I mean, they decided to go hatch first, into pool, into gas after that on 17. So everything has been very, very standard for these two guys.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's ZVZ. I mean, the current metagame, like we talked about last game, tends to go towards hatchery first. In most situations here, Metropolis is a very large map, so, why not go hatch first? You're going to be pretty safe.
Now, important to note that both these guys are leaving all of their workers on gas as we continue along here, so they're not going to cut it at exactly 100 just for that Zergling speed, and we could see Banelings pretty quick, could be moving to Roaches or higher tech pretty quick as well.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I would think that they're just going to both want to get their Baneling nests, but, we've passed that point where they would have put that down potentially. They've got 50 gas already, so may we actually just see really quick layers from each player? Nope, there's a Baneling nest for RevivaL, so will we see one from Bly? And I gotta say too, Bly, this is kind of off topic, but he always stands out in my mind because back in like late 2010 when I was casting a lot of the online cups, I would do some of the EU ones too, and he would actually Baneling bust against Protoss all the time back then, and so that's what makes him stand out in my mind, because he was like one of the only Zergs that would really do that consistently, and it looked so risky, but he made it work somehow more often than not.
Speaking of risky, man, I mean, he's sitting on a spine crawler up the front. Okay, there we go. Finally, a Baneling nest gets put down. I was like, wow, that is way after his opponents.
Saving up a ton of gas, too.
No kidding. He could go into layer tech right now at the exact same time that he's moving up into those Banelings. Started to knock down the destructible debris to head over to his third. RevivaL, on the other hand, quad gas off a 2 base. We're going to see layer tech here in just a bit, or actually it is on the way. Never mind. Halfway done. Could be a Spire coming up very soon. Could be that heavy 2-base Infestor play as well.
Yeah, I mean, Spire is actually really popular on this map. The reason being is that if you get those 6 to 10 Mutalisks out, you can get map control. That's kind of the big thing with that, and it keeps your third base really, really safe. So with both of these guys probably thinking about taking a third, getting Spire going Mutalisks is definitely something that's going to help them do that. Now, if they both go Mutalisks, that's a completely different story. Then we're going to end up in a position where things get a little bit weird and a little bit fun too. So hopefully that happens. And there's Spire number 1 from Revival, and we'll have to see if Bly follows suit once his lair finishes.
Yeah, kind of like I think it was MLG Anaheim last year. Maybe it was a little bit later, Rally possibly. But when we saw Hebro take out Nesty, right. it was the same way. It went Mutas versus Mutas. I remember Slush was actually playing Nesty, and I was watching that because he was Rain Slush at the time, and Frank was like live tweeting every second about his performance. So we'll see what Bly wants to do here. His layer tech is finished, but no semblance of tech out of him quite yet. There it is, Spire for him.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, just like I said, if you want to take a third base and hold it safely, a lot of times the way to do that is to get a few Mutalisks out. Now, when both players have Mutalisks, we get into kind of an awkward situation, just like those Banelings walking past the morphing ones. That's a bit awkward too. Oh, what? No, don't do that with your Banelings. Bly. Yeah. No, they're still morphing. Okay, now you can, if you want to, now you can do that. But he's not going to. Oh,
whoa!
Getting ran past. So I think we're going to end up with something a little bit interesting here once both players realize that they are both going Spire, and those Banelings literally just wandered right into that hatchery, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah. And so did those.
Oh.
All right. Well, he just wants to do as much damage as he can to the hatchery, apparently. So let's see here. Out of Bly, Aspire's just about to finish up. There are already 7 Mutas on the way from Revival, who's taking his third base behind this. Not like Bly, whose only difference in this game was that he took his third base before getting layer tech and eventually that Spire.
So here's the thing about Muta versus Muta and ZVZ. It becomes a game where there is an aggressor and a defender most of the time. The players kind of feel each other out a little bit. They're like, all right, I think I have more Mutas than you. And then, okay, a little bit of aggression here with Banelings not doing a whole lot.
Actually knocks out that Spinecrawler, which was actually kind of cool in addition to the units that Bly killed.
That does help, because what Muta versus Muta becomes about is speedling counterattacks, because you're distracting people with your Mutas while you're speedling counterattacks. And just like Bly is showing us here, you can actually do some decent damage, and it looks like he certainly will.
Yeah, going to try and get that Queen, which it looks like he will get, and snag a few worker kills as well, trying to hide some units off to the left while he morphs in a few Banelings as well.
So say you're spending all your money on Mutas and your opponent has about the same amount of Mutas, only they've made a lot of Speedlings as well. They'll attack you with their Mutas and their Speedlings, right? And even if you win the Muta versus Muta fight, below all that, the Speedlings are just going to be wrecking everything. So there's this like, whoa, Baneling hitting the main, but there's this really subtle like Zergling counterattack mini game that goes on when it's Muta versus Muta ZVZ, and that's kind of what we're going to see here, I think. Here comes a Speedling counterattack from Revival. We'll have to see how ready Bly is.
Yeah, it looks like Bly was pretty ready there, so Revival has to turn back around at the moment. Bly, on the other hand, let's see here. He's decided to make 4 more Mutas, 8 more Mutas. When those pop, he'll have 17. That his opponent is going to be up to 20 here in just a second. So.
Now, you notice Bly getting Carapace before attack. That generally tends to be the better decision. The way that Mutalisk attacks bounce, the armor mitigation is going to go a longer way than having your attacks just do a tiny little bit more. So oftentimes a lot of pros will recommend going Carapace first, but Revival's going to have 1-1 overall if he gets time to make this finish. That'll work okay.
Yeah.
And here we go. Is it Muta versus Muta time? No, not yet. Revival making a run for it. And what is the Muta count right now for both players here?
It is 19 to 17.
Yep.
And of course, if the next Muta engagement doesn't come until +1 finishes up for Revival, then he's actually going to be in a pretty good spot. He'll be carrying a full upgrade over his opponents. Oh, Zerglings streaming into the main.
Yep.
How many workers have been picked off so far? 13 to 6. So pretty good advantage game there by Revival.
Yeah, Revival sending even more Speedlings down there. It does take a long time usually for Mutalisks to kill off Speedlings, just because there's so many of them, they're so fast, and you can send little groups here and there. So that's why the Lings generally do a lot of damage. And here we go. We've got Mutas coming into the main here, and then watch for Revival to maybe send his Speedlings somewhere else here too. Going after some Queens, and here come the Mutas. for Bly. Are we going to see a straight-up fight? It looks like we are. Revival going for it. This may not be a good decision.
No, Revival actually does some damage to the Queens and a little bit of the economy, but loses a few of his mutas. But as he flies away, he's swinging in with those Speedlings once again.
Yep. Here we go. So this is like what I was talking about. Those Queens a little bit lower on health. And Revival, if he wants to, could target the Queens on, deciding not to, opting for the natural expansion instead, where he'll go after some drones.
Yeah, so a good touch there. He is able to pick off a couple of units before eventually dying. But as we can see, he also did something pretty critical to Bly as well. When you're in ZVZ and you're going into those mutas versus mutas, you don't want to have to be the guy who's putting up spore crawlers to defend. You want to be able to rely on your mutas, unit control, things like that. We have a few coming up for Revival now, but Bly had to put those up a lot earlier and sacrifice quite a bit of economy at a time when he had just lost a bunch of drones in order to get that done.
Yeah, no, it looks like Revival is going to be the first player to kind of switch out of mutas. He's already got some infestors on the way, and he has an option to make hydras as well. You know, again, you want to sprinkle some hydras in with the infestors so that you don't have to use quite as much energy to defend against mutas. And so now it's going to be a little bit tougher for Bly to get in there and use those Mutalisks. He's going to get that map control, and you can see he's planning on using that to take this 4th base too. But as you can also see, if you don't sit there and diligently defend that base, you're going to lose it.
Yeah, and not canceled either. So a few hundred resources gained there for Revival, whose macro is a little bit more in check than his opponents at the moment. We do have a couple of infestors coming up for Bly, but Revival is already heading up to infestors 5 and 6.
Yep, and these infestors, we'll call them Thing 1 and Thing 2. I don't know why I suddenly went all Dr. Seuss on that.
I guess so.
But Zergs, you know, you could think of them as Thing 1 and Thing 2. They're kind of like
Hat Person
creature-ish.
Hat Person in our office has an amazing shirt. Oh, no, is it Hat Person or is it Joshy? Now I'm forgetting. That has the shirt that's 1 shell, 2 shell, red shell, blue
Mario
shell.
Kart 1, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who has that, but it's awesome.
I'm really happy about that. Mario Kart for life.
Well, I
Gotcha,
think
bros.
Revival is going to be pretty happy about the fact that Bly's going to have a hard time doing anything to his 4th base, and he's actually going to move out with an attack here to kind of try to cover that as well. Make sure that 3rd base gets up and stays safe. Bly still has a good amount of mutas, but we'll see how effective he'll be in using those. This could actually work okay. Okay, never mind. The Overlords do see the mutas moving out, and Revival thinking about moving back. He's like, do I want to keep going with this? Decides to stay back and be a little bit more defensive instead. Probably the better decision at this point.
But Bly has only now put up his 4th base once again. Revival has been working off of his for a while now, starting to drop a few drones over there. In addition, of course, his hive tech is halfway done. Bly's just sitting on lair at the moment.
Right. Supply is still pretty much dead even for both of these players. A slight lead right now for Bly, but it doesn't really make a big difference in terms of this stage in his ZVZ. Hydralisk still being produced here by Revival, and I think that's a good idea too, to go a little bit heavier on the Hydralisk, just because he did see that his opponent Bly was sticking with mutas a little bit longer than he was, but he needs to get some defense in the main here.
Yes, he does. One Spore Crawler goes down, but unfortunately, these mutas are just going to swing in and take out quite a bit else. Oh, it looks like they're just going to try and take out Hive Tech here. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to get that down and loses some Hydras as he leaves as well. Didn't really get any damage done there. That's going to allow enough time for Tier 3 tech structures to get started.
Yeah, it didn't go well for Bly, but it could have actually been a lot worse. You notice at the very end, he sent one muta out to scout for when his opponent's mutas were coming in. That's a little trick that you have to do in muta versus muta ZVZ. If you get surprised by their mutas and they just come up right on top of you, even if you run away, you're going to take a lot of losses with that. So Bly actually did end up saving a lot more of those Mutalisks than he potentially would have been able to if he hadn't done that as well. But either way, you know, things just kind of not going the best for Bly. It's almost a similar situation, just with different units that we saw with Nurchio versus Revival, where in the end, you know, Revival has just kind of been able to keep his bases a little bit more consistently.
There's a lot of energy just expended by Blythe there, and he turns around with his infestors, and he's not able to get a ton of damage. He'll take out an Overlord or two, but that's not the biggest deal in the world. Revival actually just going to start going to work on these spine crawlers up at the front. He's got to make sure he doesn't lose those infestors. He's already lost one, but now he has fought back those enough that it's not going to be an issue anymore. So a few Zerglings patrolling back and forth. It looks like Bly is just going to opt for the counterattack. However, these infestors are picked up on, but there's going to be a ton of infested Terrans.
No kidding. It looks like we may even be into a little bit of a crazy base trade situation here with this game, but I think Revival does have a bit of an advantage going into it. We'll have to see what happens when the dust clears here. That's a ton of infested Terrans. The Spire definitely going to die. And there goes the Evo Chamber. The Hive not really getting targeted, but it is under threat as well.
That's right, but a lot of the tech is going down for Bly as well. He's not really had any economic damage. I take that back 100%. He actually had a few roaches take out a hatchery over here, so Revival getting some good damage done. Now, unfortunately, all of these infested Terrans have died, and a single hatchery has not fallen. Not even this Hive.
When Revival moved into that 4th base area, too, he also caught pretty much all the defensive infestors that Bly had and was managing to kill off those as well. We didn't quite catch up, but that also happened. So Bly really on the ropes right now. He's losing pretty much everything. And you can see the supply lead, almost 100 supply lead right now for Revival. And it's gonna be tough for Bly to stay in this game much longer.
Bly does have the rest of his Mutalisk up, but once the rest of the anti-air catches up, or really just any of the ground forces, I don't see Bly getting a whole lot done. He is back by 84 supplies, trying to move in once again with his infestors. Oh, but there is detection there, and a couple of infestors die right away.
Yep, now this is such a great unit composition for Revival. He's so safe from the mutas because Bly can't send in like one muta to pick off infestors because there's too many Hydras, and he can't send all the mutas in there because they'll get fungled. So yeah, Revival just kind of has his game nailed down, it looks like. He may end up losing his Hive, but at this point it doesn't really matter a whole lot.
Nope, not at all. 55 supply now for Bly, and it looks like he's forced to just remake a spawning pool, and that's never a good scenario to be. These mutas not even getting anything done off to the side, too many spore crawlers, and that is an FG, and TSL has taken their second game in a row.
That's right. So despite the loss, Bly feeling good at the end of that last